Bill Anders will always mention that he was the first one to get to the moon because he was in a position whereby he was a few centimeters ahead of us as he rotated the spacecraft.
Mark Spitz, you know, I mean, first is first, you know.
No, wait. The reason is we were flying backwards and he had a bigger butt. That's the only.
Whatever it takes.
But when
First
we
around the
finally came into the Earthshine, or sunshine, actually, we came out, I think we were best expressed as three school kids looking through a candy store window. You know, the flight plan was forgotten for a few moments. Our noses were pressed to the glass, and we were all looking at those ancient old craters on the far side of the moon, which, of course, as you all know, we don't see from the Earth. And to see what they were and how they were, we were just 60 miles above the moon at that time. And I think that's one of the great impressions I've had in the first instances of actually becoming a satellite of the moon.
Jim was busy photographing along the flight path through the navigation system, and I was shooting right, left, one thing that I don't think we had a light meter. The NASA had calculated what the reflected light would be depending on our longitude, which depend on our time. And so I just checked the clock and I'd turn it F this or F that, and so we got a lot of good pictures of the lunar surface.
As Bill said, he was doing all this with photography, and I wanted him to be studying the systems, doing this. So I said, Anders, forget about those pictures. Don't worry about it, but we'll be able. And he was doing all this on the sly in the sauna without anybody knowing about it. But actually, I think that was probably the most important evidence that we brought back was the photography. And Jim and Bill did it all.
We were coming around on this third revolution, and I was taking pictures over here. Jim was asleep. I'm not even sure what he was doing. And I think Frank yelled out, "Look," or something. And here was this gorgeous thing coming up over the lunar horizon, the back side of the moon, much rougher than the front side of the moon. And so, boy, there was a mad scramble for cameras. Each guy had one, started firing off. I was lucky because I had one with a long lens and color film. And I just kept snapping and turning the f-stop. And each of the guys took the same view but different size lenses, and it just so happened that NASA picked the one I took as the iconic Earthrise picture. But frankly, even though they both claimed they took it, they know who did, but I consider it kind of a crew picture.
We've talked about being in orbit now, and one of the more exciting parts of the mission from my standpoint was lighting the rocket to get us home. Otherwise, we'd still be there. On the 10th revolution, behind the moon, we lit the rocket for about 4 or 5 minutes. It worked perfectly, and we started home. And go ahead, James.
Well, I have to get into detail here because we're in the far side of the moon, and we have to light this engine, otherwise we'll be captured permanently as a satellite of the moon. And so my job was to actually do the work through the computer, and we had a signal, or actually numbers on the computer that got down to 5 seconds before it should be lit, and it said something like, "Do you really want to make this maneuver?" This gave you a little bit of a chance to say, "Hey, I don't want to do this," to think about it. And so I hesitated with my finger, and Borman says, "Push the button, push the button."
Anyway, my recollection is we're coming back 35,000 feet a second, way over any world speed record that had been set before, 7 miles a second, basically. And I remarked to Frank or Jim and said, "Gee, it looks like, are we getting sunrise? Or no, were we getting entry?" And they said, "Oh, no, this is sunrise." And I said, "Well, if this is sunrise, we're going right into the sun." And it just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And pretty soon I felt like a bug that was somehow gotten inside a blowtorch flame watching this torch go. And as the G's build up, every now and then it looked like a big chunk would come flying off the heat shield. Well, when you see the meteors coming in, they light up very bright, but really they're just tiny little pebbles, and they ionize and make a big flash. I didn't think about that at the time, and I could just feel the heat coming through the spacecraft. And then we got down lower. We came in at night, first night re-entry. Then it got dark, and at at 50,000 feet or so, the drogues fired, and we could feel a jerk. That was very reassuring. And then at 18,000 or something, the main chutes came out, 12,000, and but we couldn't see them, and I think we needed 2 to make it, you know.
Yeah.
And so it all seemed like one jerk, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, 3 chutes and 1 pull, that's not too good. But our Jim and Frank checked our vertical velocity, seemed to be in orbit. But when we hit, it was the biggest belly buster I've ever been on. And one of Frank's jobs was to flick a switch that would blow off the parachutes. But, you know, we hit so hard it just ripped his hand from the switch. And by the time he could recover, the chutes had pulled downwind and this thing was floating upside down. So I thought, here we were, conquering heroes from the moon, hanging from our straps, and all the trash that was in the spacecraft that had collected on the floor when we were coming in now was raining down on our face. So it was, that's one of my big recollections.
Well, we came in because why we hit so hard, the spacecraft was hanging from the parachutes at an angle. And the idea was that the edge of the spacecraft would slice into the water and sort of not make it a little bit easier for the landing. Well, it so happened that we were swinging on the shrouds of the parachutes, and also the wave action was such that they both matched so that we hit both things flat. And that's what caused the sudden, hitting the water. And of course, the parachutes then pulled us over to what is known as a stable 2, which meant that we were hanging upside down just on our straps, which is sort of an unusual way. And so Frank had to throw another switch that inflated about 3 balloons that slowly made us rotate up. And all this motion, of course, with Frank was another little disconcerting thing. And he couldn't wait to get out of that spacecraft to get back on that ship.
I think that the 3 of us were very, very fortunate Americans. 400,000 people put that thing together, 400,000 Americans. Several died in it, in the fire and in airplane crashes. I felt very, very, very blessed to be with Jim and Bill because there was a wonderful camaraderie there.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I know. I'm still mad about you doing that in the sauna, but nevertheless, it was a remarkable feeling, and I can remember as we stepped out on the carrier with that fresh ocean breeze and the flag flying there and the sailors all standing around. It was a feeling to me of overwhelming sense of gratitude for what we had been part of.
As soon as we got down, at least in my feelings, I didn't realize exactly what we had accomplished. I knew that we accomplished a successful first flight to the moon, but I didn't know the significance of it for the United States and for the world of what had happened. It takes time for these things to sink in. It takes a little bit of history and aging to say, hey, really what happened? How does this affect our view of the country, especially as Martin had mentioned, 1968 was a very poor year in this country, and then we suddenly ended that year on a positive note, doing something positive for the country that everybody could take pride in.
And in a sense, great feelings about the accomplishment, but I frankly felt a little guilty, because all of us had comrades and colleagues doing things that I thought were a lot more dangerous. Fighting in Vietnam, a lot of colleagues shot down, put in prison. El Dorado Canyon, raid on Libya. Frankly, I think Apollo 8 was probably a lot safer. And we were lucky to be part of it, as Frank said.
Well, I do too. I agree with you. And you stop thinking, look at John Glenn. 69 missions in World War II, and there's so many missions in Korea, and if I hadn't been in Apollo, I would have wanted to been in Vietnam, yeah. But we weren't, and we sort of got all the adulation and all the success and all the plaudits, and there were so many people that were trying to serve this country under much more difficult circumstances. So I felt very humble and very grateful.